Hello guys, in this tutorial we'll create a port scanner using Kotlin. So to scan the ports of a particular website, this program simply connects to the website via various specified ports. If the connection is successful, then the port is opened. But if we get a timeout error for the connection, then the port is closed. So the first thing we want to do is to create a new directory for our project. So let's call it scanner. Sorry, scanner. Now go into the scanner directory and create a new directory, call it source. And finally, inside the source directory, create a new file, then call it scanner.kt. Now open up your favorite text editor and then open the project directory on your text editor. So that's going to be Kotlin. Now open up the new Kotlin file, the scanner.kt. Now the first thing we want to do before writing any code is to set the package name to com.scanner. So package com.scanner. Don't worry if you don't understand what it means, plus it's optional, so you can skip it if you want to. Now let's import the required packages. The first package we are going to import is import java.net.sockets. This java.net.sockets is going to import the socket function from java.net, and this function will be used to create the socket instance to be used to scan the ports of the particular website you want to scan. Then the next package we want to import is the java.net.init address. Now what this particular line of code does is it imports the init socket address function from java.net, and this socket address function is going to be used together with our socket function in order to enable us to add timeout to our socket instance. Finally, the last thing we are going to import is the socket timeout exception. So import java.net.socket timeout exception. So what this does is it imports the socket timeout exception, which will be used during error handling in order to identify the ports that can be connected to as closed ports. Now create the main function while giving it an argument args of type array string. This parameter will be the command line argument we give the program when we run it. The first argument being the port which the scan should start from, the second being the port which the scan should end at, and the third argument being the URL of the website you want to scan. Now let's convert the first and second command line arguments to ints. So args, the first argument dot to int, then the second argument dot to int. Then assign them both to value start and value end respectively. Now let's assign the third command line argument to the value URL. So value URL equals to args 2. Now using a for loop, let's loop through all the ports between the start port and the end port. So for ports in start to end. Now let's create a new socket instance and assign the value to sockets. So val sockets equals to sockets. So what this line of code does is it creates a new socket instance and it assigns it to the value socket. Then let's use the try and catch statement to determine if a port is opened or closed. So try. Inside the try statement, use socket.connect and init socket address to connect to the website while giving it a timeout of 5 seconds. So socket.connect init address URL, which have a URL of URL and a ports with a timeout of 5 seconds. Then print that this particular port is opened. So println ports dot to string is opened. So this line of code, println port is opened, is only going to run if we don't get a timeout error in this particular line of code, which is socket.connect. Now, if we don't get a timeout error in socket.connect, it means that the particular port the socket is connecting to is opened. But if we get a timeout error, it means the particular port the socket is connecting to is closed. So let's use the catch statement to catch the error whenever we get a timeout error. So beneath here, let's go catch exception socket timeout exception, and then print line ports dot to string is closed. So the second print line statement is only going to run if we get a socket timeout exception, and we're only going to get a socket timeout exception when our port is closed. So when our port is closed, the print line statement is going to print ports, the particular port in question is closed. Now, using the finally statement, let's close the socket. Anytime you're writing socket application, it's good practice to always close your sockets after you're done using the socket. So finally, sockets dot close. Now save the code and then open up a terminal in the root directory of the project, which is the scanner directory, and then in the root directory compile the code using Kotlin, then the path to the code, which is source scanner.kt, then giving it a parameter of include runtime, and also a parameter d scanner.jar, which will be the output. So run this and wait a few moments. So after it's done compiling, when you check your scanner directory, you find out that you get a scanner.jar file here. So that's the compiled form of your scanner.kt. So let's run the scanner.jar file. So Kotlin scanner.jar, then the start port, let's give it start port of 78, then the end port, let's give it 85, and then the URL, I'm going to drop a URL to my website, which is cnedprogramming.tech. Now run the code. So when you run the code, you're going to wait a while. Then as you see, it has scanned port 78 and port 78 is closed, then port 79 is closed, port 80 is opened, and so on and so forth. So if you found this tutorial educative, make sure to like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have questions about this particular program or you are stuck somewhere in the code, make sure to leave your question in the comment section below. So until the next one, Odabo and stay safe.